So Ivy, if patients are then interested in enrolling in a trial, could you tell them a little bit more about what the logistics often look like for a trial?
Yes, sure. I think the logistics are quite important when you enroll in a clinical trial, and that you can ask about how often do they have to come to clinic? Do they need a biopsy, like for any extra further workup? How long will it take to get on trial feasibility? How long will I be on the trial? How will we know if this is working? Who will be in charge of my care while I am in the clinical trial? And this is important because sometimes transfer care occurs temporarily during the trial. Sometimes you will see your primary oncologist and your trial oncologist.
Those are great points. Another really common question that comes up is, how much is this trial going to cost me? And that's a really great question to bring up with the trial team. The cost of the treatment itself is usually covered by the sponsor of the trial, so pharmaceutical company or government-sponsored trials, but other expenses, including transportation, lodging, if the trial isn't in your home city, food, those things may or may not be covered, and those are important questions to ask the trial team. Another question comes up is, does my insurance cover expenses associated with the clinical trial? And the answer most of the time is yes. So private insurance companies are actually mandated to cover all the routine costs associated with clinical trials. So those are things like clinic visits, lab visits, anything that would be part of a standard of care if you were getting, any sort of treatment. Private insurance companies are required to cover those expenses. But there are some caveats. For example, if the institution where the trial is being run and where you're being seen is outside of your insurance network, that may not apply. There's still some regular cost sharing that patients may face for those routine visits, for the clinic visits. Even if it's covered, there may still be some costs associated with it. Medicare is also mandated to cover such routine costs. And actually now Medicaid is also required to cover such costs. And that's pretty recent as of 2022. And so coverage, your insurance, long story, short, your insurance should cover the routine costs associated with the clinical trial. However, there may be expenses that are not covered by the trial and not covered by insurance. And here, foundations can be a good resource. And so here are a few resources, and there is many such resources, but Triage Cancer can help with investigating insurance coverage for trials, making sure the trial is covered, and also thinking about financial repercussions. The Lazarex Cancer Foundation can help provide financial support for things like travel and lodging. The Patient Access Network Foundation can also help with financial support for medical and non-medical expenses. And so just a few resources to keep in mind if cost might be a barrier to enrolling.
This is so great, Meera. There are so many resources that you are providing to the patients that I'm sure that's going to be very helpful for them and their families. And I think, like, what if after doing all this process, you decide to change your mind and you don't want to enroll in the clinical trial? I think it's important to understand that you can withdraw from the trial at any time. Remember, you're the one who is in charge. Giving your consent does not mean that you are locked into the trial. So you can just withdraw from the trial. And if you decided to enroll in a clinical trial, as we mentioned before, the research team will provide you with so many details that sometimes you can feel overwhelmed. But that's okay. It's very important that you keep communication with your research team. It's very important that you follow the instructions that the research team is going to provide to you. You need to ask all the questions about anything that is unclear to you. You need to tell the research team if you have like a new health problem. And this is very important because you could have like a side effect of the clinical trial treatment, and that could inform to help other patients. So tell the research team if you have any worry or concern. This is something that we always recommend to you. Always communicate with your research team, with your oncologist. I would even recommend, like, before leaving the cancer center, you get a contact number. So if you have any question from home, you feel free to call those numbers. Or if you could use your patient portal, and you just make sure you can write directly to your doctor or the research nurse who can help you to answer those questions. I think this is a good way to reach out to your team, even if you're at home and if you decide to talk with a family, with a friend, and then you have like more questions about the treatment. And take your notes and bring those to the visit.
So then what can you expect after you enroll in a clinical trial? Well, you may have more frequent visits with the clinical trial, although some trials are adapting to more remote monitoring and telehealth, kind of spurred by the adjustments we had to make due to the COVID pandemic. But often you will have more clinic visits with the clinical trial because there's more intense monitoring. You will also talk with different members of a clinical trial team. Those include research coordinators, and staff, nurses, as well as the oncology team. Your visits might be longer, especially in the beginning, and research staff often take really detailed notes of any side effects that you're having to ensure that they're documenting everything with great detail. So you may notice your visits are a little bit longer. You may be enrolled in a clinical trial for weeks, months, or sometimes even years. The frequency of how often you have to come to clinic may change over time as you're on the trial for a longer period of time. Some trials have a follow-up period even after the treatment portion is finished, where patients are continued to be monitored and will continue to come to clinic for regular checkups even after the treatment is finished. Ivy, any last thoughts or remarks on this topic of clinical trials?
Thank you so much, Meera, for having me. I think this is very awesome information that we're providing to our patients. I know there is a lot of information to digest from here. A couple of things that I would like you as a patient and family member to remember is always communicate with your research team. This is very important. Ask all the questions that you have. They are obligated or they are on your side to help you go through your journey. And even if you don't feel like safe, if you don't feel like you have all the answers and you don't want to participate in the clinical trial, you are free to stop at any time. Just find the resources. There are a lot of people out there going from the same that you're going through, and I'm very sure that they're able to help you. So thank you so much for having me today, Meera. Thank you for this space.
Yeah, thank you so much, Ivy. If you're interested in learning more, these are some links that I found helpful. So cancer.net has some great resources on questions to ask with clinical trials. They have a link on insurance coverage and cost of clinical trials. Sarah Cannon research organization also has a nice link. And then cancer.gov also has some great information. So just some extra information if it's helpful. And thank you all so much for your attention.